Pleasure.
Thanks for coming.
I just think that people should start looking at this place rather than just being million-dollar real estate. This is where people have grown up and lived, and it's been a very close community, and that's the thing that we all love about it. Not the real estate or the views or anything else, it's our community.
The community here at the Rocks are great. All the people, we love each other. We want to stay here, don't want to go anywhere.
Both Labor and Liberal have failed public housing for years. And I think it's, when you consider that people in High Street, Miller's Point, have put up with enormous noise levels for many decades when this wharf was very, very busy. And it's wrong that there's now talk about those people having to move out. So I think I'm all for the people in High Street remaining where they are.
So you are obviously a member of the CFMEU, and a lot of the CFMEU workers are going to be working on Barangaroo. Would you be asking them to consider their support for these people?
Well, I'm active in the retired members of the CFMEU, and I'll certainly be raising with them on Tuesday about the plight of these people, and I expect the CFMEU to give full support to the residents.
Could we perhaps see strike action going on from any of these workers?
Well, I think we can certainly see that public housing is going to be put on the agenda, and the most important thing is that those people who are affected, many of those, their parents and grandparents have lived in those houses, so there's a real attachment to the area, and I think it's vital that the government deals with the issue before it gets out of hand.
You took up a fight here in the 70s. Is it going to be as big as that?
Pardon?
You took up a fight here in the 70s. Is it going to be as big as that?
Well, I don't know if as big as that. That was a terrific... Most Sydney-siders would now say that that was one of the best green bands ever because it saved part of our birthplace. The Rock's part of our birthplace. And therefore, I think it's very, very important that we remember that what happened in the 1970s could happen again.
It's a social housing experiment these residents don't want.
Leave us here, leave us alone. Why are we not entitled to a little bit of a view or something?
Their heritage-listed homes are under a government review, which could see them sold off and residents forced to other public housing further away.
I've paid over 100 years in rent here, I think, and still battling to stay here.
With his green bans in the 1970s, Jack Mundy helped save Sydney's historic Rocks precinct from a high-rise development. He's been enlisted to the Miller Point fight.
Those people who are affected, many of those, their parents and grandparents have lived in those houses, so there's a real attachment to the area.
Of the 400 residents who live here, the majority are aged over 60. But the state government says most of the 208 homes it owns in Millers Point are too expensive to maintain. 29 houses have already been sold, earning the government $28 million, which it says will be used to pay for new social housing. But the sales program hasn't won the support of the state's Auditor-General, who said in a report last month that the selling off of houses to pay for others isn't financially viable.
I've been here for about 10 years, and I like stay here. We are like to hold the pensions. We are easy for us to going anywhere or transport everything, and best way what we are can be here, and that's why we are like stay here, and like all the other people, we are friendly and everything nice, quiet and good.
Now we gave it a lot of support, and it's ready to roll for us. That includes unions, it includes politicians, but we must be a united, organised group.
Just to introduce myself, I'm Tony Hadfield, former union organiser for the BLF, and I was around and involved in the 72 Green Band that saved the Rocks. And just to this chap, I didn't hear your name, I don't know your name, but what he said, he gave a history of what's been going on, and I've heard the same, and we've been given Bob and Barney, with Russ and myself, is also the same history, and that giving our advice what we think should be the way you go forward in solving your problem. Now, first thing I'd say, to solve your problem, you won't solve it amongst yourselves, you won't solve it by yourselves, you're only going to solve it with public support. Green ban, I'm in no position to give you a green ban, but a green ban is not necessarily going to happen, but you could still, we've canvassed and there is union support. But everything that's happened so far, in my view, has been defeatist. The attitude's been defeatist. The stories I'm hearing about how we go to the Housing Commission, putting offers to the Housing Commission, there has been no fight. The status quo has been stated. I assume everyone understands the status quo. You should be, at least, in my view, starting off the status quo and repairs. And that's the war you should be winning. I don't see where you should be negotiating with the government that you want something new. Did they put it in your head that what they want is, as being said, they want the properties, don't they? They don't want you on their payroll. So what you've got to do, what the idea of this meeting was today, is to establish a group here to get the meeting going at the Mott Hall, where everyone can be there, and then you elect a committee. And that committee then organises a campaign. That campaign will involve many, many things that you have to do. But the basic thing is you've got to get in all your minds together uniformly what you want to happen. You want the status quo. There will be variations. Everyone's got their own individual little things that nitpick them and they want to put that in, but in the end it's got to be what the majority want. It's got to be a uniform thing to a major degree. If you want to get support, you won't win anything unless you get public support. This isn't Glebe, it's not Pyrmont, it's not Aldermale. All these solutions used in these places, this is the birthplace of white Australia. You're the custodians. And that's got to be made a point of. And got to be expanded. And got to be taken out to the Sydney-siders. The fair go comes from here. This is where it originated. From the convicts, from the military, etc. This is where the fair go come from. And that's what you're fighting for. We'll help you. The unions will help you. We've been talking to them. They'll help you. There's lots of things that can be done. But you first have got to get it in there and say, we want to stay here. This community doesn't want to be broken up. But what you've got to do is think, let's fight. Let's have a go. You lose nothing if you have a go. You've already lost. You're fighting from a losing position. You're talking about the Housing Commission like they're the emperor, like they can't be defeated. Change your thinking. Older people can only do so much. We understand that. Means younger people have got to do twice as much. People have got to be educated about the history of the place. Got to put some fight. How do you think the green ban was won? People lost their livelihood winning that green ban. This is a big threat. You all know that. Without me saying a word about it, there's no evidence, but there's every chance. That's part of why they want it. But they want it because it's in a city. You can spit the circular key and the wealthy want it. You're always only ever minding places for the wealthy. It's the same where I live. The wealthy always want it. How many times we moved it, not necessarily here, but a lot of us have had to move on and on and on because the wealthy decide it's our time we take the place. You've got to stand and fight, otherwise you don't win anything. I'll leave it at that.
Good point. What does your home mean to you?
Everything. Everything. Means everything to me.
We're only pensioners. They're throwing the pensioners out.
It seems like the government determined to get rid of all of us and make a quid out of the area.
I'm not going nowhere. They can carry me out in a box as far as I'm concerned.
That's all we want, fair go. As I said, we can coexist with the rich, but give us a fair go.
Barney and Robert were born in Millers Point and have lived here all their lives. A harbourside Sydney suburb full of 100-year-old terraces. Once for the working class, now it's one of the most sought-after pieces of real estate in the country.
I worked and paid me taxes, and as I say, I worked over in the wool dumps over here, the wool stores and that. I worked around the area. We had $1 million view, all right, but there's plenty of other people who've got $1 million views too, you know. We're not the only ones.
The government is considering selling off the social housing in this area, hundreds of properties in all, and relocating all of the residents.
How do you feel about this talk that they may be moving people like you?
I don't like it.
76-year-old Pat is also a Millers Point local. She too has those spectacular waterfront views. There won't be any of those if she's sent packing.
Why don't you think it's right?
Well, can't they rich go somewhere else? In the suburbs?
Can you understand why many residents are concerned and many residents don't want to move?
Look, we absolutely understand that, that people are concerned, and that's why we're listening to people's views.
And so what would it mean if you have to give it up, if they kick you out?
Well, I'm not going to go down without a fight, put it that way.
What would be your message to the government?
Leave us where we are.
Simple as that?
Yes.
My mob, the Camilroy, observed a similar cultural protocol in terms of welcoming and acknowledging country. So, because I'm not one of the Gadigal mob, it's not appropriate for me to welcome to country, to provide a welcome to country, but it's certainly, I take great pride in acknowledging country. And in doing so, on your behalf, can I acknowledge the elders of the Gadigal people, pay respects to those elders past and present, and pay tribute to their continuing survival and continuing cultural practices on country. As I've said, I'm very proud to be part of this important cultural protocol this morning, and can I just say that in doing so, there is a historic link between acknowledging country this morning and between the organisation of this event. And the link, if I could just take a minute to highlight the link is this, that the Gadigal, along with many of the other Aboriginal tribes around the Sydney Harbour, were the first Indigenous nations to feel the full brunt of the colonial invasion and colonial experience. And we've learnt that colonial experience in the first instance took the form of destruction of the Gadigal camps and dispossession of the Gadigal lands. And so we seem to have learned nothing from history. We now have a new wave of dispossession in the form of public housing in Millers Point. Those interests and those people who champion the removal of public housing from Millers Point, we believe they are misguided and inappropriate. So, the public housing tenants of Millers Point, unlike the Gadigal in the 1700s, are entitled to be treated with the utmost respect, with dignity, entitled to be consulted about what's going to happen to them and their housing arrangements, and they're entitled to have a major say in the future of housing in Millers Point. The Aboriginal community of Sydney would support the organisers of this event and would very strongly support the public housing tenants of Millers Point. We share your struggle, we support you in your struggle, and we wish you all the very best. Thanks very much, Mark.